All right, so today we're diving into something pretty cool.
Okay.
A YouTube video showing how to build a tiny FM radio.
Oh, wow.
Like, you wouldn't believe how small it is.
Really?
Yeah, it uses just a microcontroller and a little FM receiver chip,
Hmm.
and it all fits into a space smaller than your thumb.
That's amazing.
I know, right? Talk about resourceful.
It really shows you how far electronics have come.
Totally.
Years ago, this would have been like a huge project.
Yeah.
Tons of components, lots of space.
You would have needed a whole workbench.
Exactly.
Mm.
But now we can do it all in a tiny little package.
It's wild, and it's not just about, following the instructions.
Yeah.
It's about really understanding how these components work together,
Yeah.
especially when you're working with such limited resources.
I bet that's a challenge.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the biggest challenges in this project
Well,
was figuring out how to control both the volume and the channel selection with just one single pin on the microcontroller.
Oh, wow. That's tricky. How did they pull that off?
Well, this is where it gets really ingenious.
Okay.
They use a network of 4 resistors, and each resistor has a very specific value. And by carefully choosing those values, they're able to create unique resistance readings for each button press.
So, like, each button has a different resistance.
Exactly. And the microcontroller can read those resistances
Oh, that's clever.
and know exactly which function to control.
Like a code almost.
Yeah. It's like a secret code embedded in the resistance.
That's a great analogy. It reminds me of those old combination locks.
Yeah.
You know, where you have to turn the dial to just the right numbers
Exactly.
to get it to open.
And the microcontroller is like the decoder ring.
Right.
It translates those resistances into actions.
That's a brilliant workaround.
It is. It really shows you how, even with limitations, you can be so innovative.
Totally. And speaking of clever workarounds,
Yeah.
what about that EEPROM?
Oh, the EEPROM. That's crucial.
It is.
It remembers the last tuned station,
Right.
so you don't have to retune it every time you turn the radio on.
Yeah, that would be annoying.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Think of the EEPROM like the radio's memory.
Oh,
Even when the power's off,
uh,
it stores the station's frequency.
makes sense.
Without it, you'd have to start from scratch every time.
And nobody wants that.
No way. And the video actually goes into detail about
Yeah.
how the radio tunes to different stations using a clever formula.
Interesting.
It's based on the station number and the FM band range.
In North America, 87 to 108 megahertz, right?
Exactly. And it's fascinating to see how a simple equation
Yeah.
can take these seemingly abstract numbers
Okay.
and turn them into the music we hear.
It's like magic.
It really is. And what's even more impressive
Yeah.
is how the code ensures a smooth transition across the entire FM band.
All right.
So when you reach the edge,
Mm.
like the top or bottom of the dial,
Uh-huh.
it seamlessly loops back around.
So you don't get...
Nope. It's a level of detail you wouldn't expect in something so small.
That's pretty cool.
And they didn't stop there. Even the menu button,
Oh, yeah.
which lets you switch between volume and channel control,
Uh-huh.
it's designed for a super user-friendly experience.
I like that.
It's amazing how much thought went into making this tiny radio both functional
Yeah.
and intuitive.
Really emphasizes the user experience.
It does. Even with limited controls, they made it easy to use.
That's important.
For sure. No, you might be wondering about the EEPROM's limitations.
Right, because you can only write data to it so many times
Exactly.
before it wears out.
That's true, but the creator actually addressed that.
Oh, good.
They calculated that based on average daily use,
Uh-huh.
the EEPROM in this tiny radio
Mm.
could last for decades.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is. And here's a fun fact.
Okay, I like fur facts.
If you're happy listening to just one station,
Uh-huh.
you can actually remove the microcontroller entirely. The radio becomes a super simplified circuit.
That's wild.
It just goes to show how resourceful this project is.
It's amazing what you can achieve with a little creativity
Absolutely.
and a deep understanding of how things work.
That's what it's all about.
I love it.
I mean, it just makes you appreciate the level of ingenuity here.
Oh, for sure.
They didn't just cram components together.
Right.
They really thought about every aspect of this radio, from functionality to user experience,
Right.
and even long-term reliability with that EEPROM.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget the soldering process.
Oh, that's important.
Right. It's all about making those connections.
It is. And the video mentions using a breadboard for prototyping first.
Yeah, which is a great idea,
Yeah.
Test the circuit before you make it permanent.
Exactly. It's like a trial run.
Yeah, exactly. And you actually see them experimenting with different pin sizes, too.
Oh, cool. So they can make it even smaller.
Yeah, exactly, to
Yeah.
get that super compact build.
Nice. Soldering can seem kind of intimidating.
I know, it can be.
At first, but it's really a fundamental skill for electronics.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's the art of connecting those components.
Yeah.
Creating the pathways for the electricity to flow.
Yeah, like building tiny little roads for the electrons to travel on.
That's a great way to put it. And they even show you how to check for continuity.
Oh, with a multimeter.
Yeah, to make sure those connections are solid.
Important.
Because, like, a faulty solder joint.
But that can cause problems.
It can. It can lead to all sorts of weird behavior in the circuit.
So it's really important to get it right.
Oh, it's crucial. It's like making sure all the roads and bridges in a city are in good shape.
Right. You don't want any traffic jams in your electronics.
Exactly. No unexpected detours for those electrons.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about the heart of this tiny radio.
Okay.
The RDA 5807 FM receiver chip.
Yeah, this little chip is what makes it all possible.
It's picking up those radio waves out of thin air.
It is, and converting them into electrical signals that we can hear.
Amazing, isn't it?
It really is. It's like a tiny little miracle worker.
Yeah.
And it's so compact and power efficient.
It really is a marvel of modern electronics.
Totally. It's incredible how much technology they've packed into that little chip.
And to think, years ago, that would have taken up a whole room, probably.
Yeah, it's crazy how far we've come.
It reminds me of how smartphones replaced like a dozen different devices.
Totally.
You used to need a phone, a camera, a music player, a GPS.
Oh, and don't forget the PDA.
Oh, yeah, the PDA. But now it all fits in your pocket.
It's amazing.
And it's all thanks to miniaturization.
Yeah, and the RDA 5807 is a perfect example of that.
Absolutely, making things smaller, lighter, more portable.
Exactly. And speaking of making things smaller,
Yeah.
the radio also needs volume control.
Oh, of course. How do they manage that?
Right. Well, they use a potentiometer as a voltage divider to adjust the strength of the audio signal.
Clever.
And the concept of a voltage divider is like, it's fundamental to electronics.
Yeah, voltage dividers are everywhere.
Think of it like a water faucet.
Okay, yes.
The potentiometer is the valve.
Okay.
And it controls how much water, or in this case, audio signal, flows through.
I see.
So by adjusting the position of the potentiometer, you're changing the ratio of resistance on either side.
Right.
And that effectively controls the voltage output.
Which in turn controls the volume.
Exactly. It's simple but elegant.
Simple and effective.
And speaking of those four resistors...
Oh, yeah. The ones that determine the function.
Exactly. They're crucial for figuring out what the control pin is doing.
Right, because you've only got that single pin to work with.
Yep. And the microcontroller measures the resistance at that pin, and based on the specific value,
it knows which button's been pressed.
Boom. Exactly.
That's so cool. And I love how the creator walks you through everything.
Me too. It's so educational.
Yeah, they really explain the logic behind the code. You even see the calculations for the station frequency.
Yeah, it's like a mini lesson in FM radio theory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just a black box.
You really get to understand how it all works.
And that's empowering.
It is. It makes you feel like you could actually build this yourself.
Gimbly.
And they're honest about the challenges too. You know, They talk about encountering some phantom values and unexpected readings when they were working with the breadboard.
Ah, yes, the joys of prototyping.
Right. Breadboards are great for experimenting, but those connections can be a little finicky.
Yeah, they're not always perfect.
So you got to take those readings with a grain of salt.
Good point.
More robust connections are needed for the final build.
Absolutely. And it's a good reminder that real-world electronics often involves a lot of troubleshooting.
Oh, for sure.
And adapting to unexpected issues.
That's part of the fun. And they also talk about the EEPROM's write limitations.
Oh, yeah. Right. You can't just write to it endlessly.
Exactly. Especially if you're constantly changing stations. You got to be mindful of that EEPROM endurance.
It's like anything else. It has a lifespan.
It does. But even with regular tuning, the creator estimated that the EEPROM in this radio could last for over a decade.
Wow, that's reassuring.
Right. They really thought this through.
They did.
But what really stands out to me is the creator's passion for teaching.
Oh, yeah.
They really want to share their knowledge.
Yeah.
It's not just about showing the steps. It's about explaining the why behind everything.
Oh, I love that.
It's like having a friend who's an electronics expert guiding you through the process.
And their enthusiasm is so contagious.
It is. They make it all seem so approachable.
Yeah, even the complex stuff.
And that's what makes this video so special.
Totally.
Yeah.
It reminds you that learning can be fun.
Absolutely. Especially when you're passionate about something. Yeah, it's really inspiring.
It is.
You know, it shows you that electronics aren't just for experts anymore.
Exactly. anyone can get into it.
Like with some basic components, a
Yeah.
little bit of knowledge.
And a willingness to learn.
Yeah.